Inside the Birds is back. Hello, everybody. It's Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, and we have finally arrived at the fourth of the four podcasts we're doing to preview the NFC East, along with our friend Greg Cosell. You can see him there if you're watching on YouTube. Are you ready to round this out and finish it off and land the plane, Greg Cosell?
Yeah, and I think we have the Birds left, right, Jeff?
We are. We saved for what many will say the best for last. The Philadelphia Eagles will be the fourth and final preview of our NFC East outlook. So we're going to, and listen, a team that's made some significant changes on both sides of the ball. So this will be an exciting podcast. And at the end, I may ask you the same question I've asked about the other three teams we've previewed, and it'll be very fascinating to hear your answer. I think we all know where I'm getting with that. So we'll get started real quick. First, I want to stop and pause and get a word in from our friends at Blue Chew. Hey, everyone, we all know that there's a lot in common between excelling at sports and excelling in the bedroom or wherever you and your partner like to be intimate. But if you don't have the confidence to be at your best, it can affect your performance, whether that's on the field or behind closed doors. That's why BlueChew.com is coming to the rescue. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in a chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Blue Chew's tablets help men combat all forms of ED. And because Blue Chew is an online prescription service, you don't have to worry about those awkward trips to the doctor or uncomfortable pickup lines at your local pharmacy. Blue Chew ships right to your doorstep in a discreet package. So just go to BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive prescription within days. That's the best part. This whole thing is done online. It's convenience you can't beat. Blue Chew's licensed medical providers will work with you to find the right ingredient and strength you need for your prescription. This is such a great alternative for those who hate taking pills. Blue Chew's tablets are chewable, easy, and made in the USA, which makes preparation and direct shipping very convenient. If you want a special offer, we got one for you. Try Blue Chew free by using the promo code ITB at checkout. You only pay the $5 shipping charge. That's BlueChew.com, promo code ITB, all one word, to get your first month free. Guys, get your confidence back so you too can perform again like a star athlete. All right, Greg. Let's start with the Eagles offense, because they did not take last year clearly and say this is fine and we just need a little spice here and there. They made a blockbuster trade to add AJ Brown to the wide receiver core. And I mean, that's the biggest the change on the offense. And we'll talk a little about the offensive line, but obviously this comes down to Jalen Hurts and what kind of year he's going to have with AJ Brown as a part of the offense. When you watch the tape of Jalen Hurts last year, what things stood out to you?
Well, let me just start with this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Eagles understand that they can't play exactly the way they did down the stretch to be a Super Bowl team. They did what they had to do last year against that particular brand of competition. They ran the ball as well as any team in the league down the stretch. They had a very multiple run game. They were physical behind a really good O-line. They're going to have a really good O-line again this year. But I think they know that there needs to be more from the passing game for them to be a Super Bowl team. And so that gets us to Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought Jalen Hurts was a mixed bag. I actually went back and watched a ton of third down throws and a ton of first down throws. So I saw a lot of Hurts dropbacks. There's a lot there with Hurts. I mean, we could spend a half hour just talking about Hurts because he's a fascinating guy to watch. Because there are throws when he does it right where there's a clear rhythm to his game. When he sets in the pocket with good balance, a firm base, delivers the football to the right receiver at the right time. His throwing sequencing is strong. He makes precise ball placement throws. He looks really good. That didn't happen quite enough a year ago, but it's there on tape. And we know that that's being worked on through OTAs and will continue to be worked on through training camp. So it's there. It can be done. But there's also issues. He's not very patient in the pocket. He has a tendency to break down when there's not real pressure by NFL standards. And what starts to happen with quarterbacks that can move is they start to perceive pressure that's not really there. And then you leave throws on the field. Now, because he can run, he might run for 12 yards and people say great play. But ultimately, you don't want to play the quarterback position like that in the NFL. That does not produce consistency over time. He needs some work with his footwork. There were times he would hop into his set in the pocket rather than plant his back foot with a firm foundation, and he would not be on balance. And you want to be on balance because then you're in better position to deliver the ball with proper timing. If you're not on balance and then you choose to make a throw, you're going to be a beat late because you have to get your body ready to deliver the ball. And in the NFL, fractions matter. So I think that there were clear positives. When I was watching the tape, I went, wow, he does this really, really well. I'd like to see him do that a lot more. And then there were too many others where I felt like he needs some work. But to me, all this is coachable. This is not stuff where you say, oh, it can't happen. And the one thing that I definitely want to say, because I watched a lot of dropbacks, is there was clear and definite improvement in Hurts in the second half of the season. The thing he clearly needs to work on is progression reading. And I guarantee the Eagles know that, because when the primary read was not there, Hurts needs to get better at eliminating it and isolating where to go within the structure of the play instead of just breaking down. But again, that's coachable.
Greg, did you feel that enough guys are getting open with the route combinations? You feel like, okay,
yeah,
the play was there, guys were getting open, he didn't get it, or at times guys were just not getting open?
No, I felt guys, in fact, when I looked on first down at him, which is, in the minds of many, the best down to throw,
Money down,
because you're going to get predictable fronts and predictable coverages for the most part. I made the note that the Eagles had some excellent half field route concepts and combinations versus zone that created conflict for zone defenders and presented defined reads and throws for Hurts. I thought overall they featured some really good route concepts that presented answers versus both man and zone and gave Hurts throws. So I did not think that there was an issue with he didn't have anywhere to go with the ball.
There were times I thought, when we did our pregame show last year, Greg, where probably more third down scenarios, if there was man and his first read was taken away and he had to move around a little bit, that we discussed guys like Devontae Smith maybe and Rager and Watkins sort of not being able to get off their man in time, especially if there was plaster coverage going on where you're hoping that you can shake your guy. Like you just talked about first down when you see a lot of zone and the ability to scheme guys open in that. But this wide receiver group around him, did it need to improve in man situations? And will that happen with A.J. Brown?
I thought Devontae Smith got open versus man.
Yeah, I purposely left his name out.
Yeah, I mean, man is a relative term, Jeff. It's the NFL. So man is not guys being 5 yards from the defender. That's not being open in the NFL.
Right.
Man is creating just enough space for the quarterback to deliver the ball with precise ball location. So I did not view the Eagles receivers for the most part as struggling. And again, this is why I love doing what I can do in the off season, because I watched, 250 Hurts dropbacks in a row in one day or a day and a half. During the season, I can't watch tape like that. So I think I got a totally different feel, Jeff, watching it in the off season, within the last couple of weeks, as I did during the season, when, because of my, job at NFL Films and being, on NFL Matchup and all, which is obviously, my main job here at NFL Films. So I can't sit and watch 250, 300 dropbacks in a row because I have to try to watch literally every team. So I got a different feel watching it, a couple of weeks ago, and I did not see that as an issue in any meaningful way. There's always plays, even with great receivers, they're covered. I mean, it is the NFL, but I didn't see that as a meaningful problem.
Gotcha.
Greg, one thing before we move on to running back, do you think watching Hurts now for 2 seasons and grading his throws, do you think he's got enough arm to make most, if not all, the throws?
Yeah, he doesn't have a power arm, but I don't think that it's a problem arm. Now, I think that his footwork and lower body mechanics are a factor here. That to me is what's critical. Because he's got to be able to plant. He's got to have a firm base and throw with some torque. That's where power comes from when you throw a football. I mean, we're never going to say he's Matthew Stafford, but you don't have to be. I think he's got enough arm if he throws the ball with timing and anticipation and fundamentally does the right thing. I mean, I made a note that Hurts showed flashes of playing the quarterback position with some subtlety and nuance, comfortable drop and set, staying on the midline, good ball carriage, stepping to his throw, timing and anticipation, pace and touch, pocket movement, resetting his platform, eyes downfield, ball placement. You did see that. You just want to see it more.
Real quick on the slot receiver, Greg, because, I know Devontae Smith and AJ Brown can and probably will move around a lot, but I expect them sort of predominantly to be outside receivers. So that leaves kind of a Quez Watkins versus the field here. Zach Pascal. We'll see what happens with Jalen Reagor and anybody else for that slot spot. Does Quez have the type of skill set as a receiver that you think translates well to the slot? Or do you think this is going to be a committee approach based on down and distance?
Yeah, that's what I think. Because Zach Pascal's a really good receiver and a really good situational receiver, and they didn't sign him to play 5 snaps a game. So, and we know that Sirianni knows him really well, and as Adam can attest, really likes him. And I think he's shown in his 2-3 year, what's it been, 3 years in Indiana, something like that.
In Tennessee before that, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to play, in my view, a good amount on third down, because he's one of those guys I think that knows how to run routes, knows how to get open. If it's zone, and you may get a lot of zone because of Hurts' ability to run, teams may not play a lot of man on third down unless it's 3rd and 2 or 3. If it's 3rd and 7, you might see a higher percentage of zone. I think Pascal is at this point far better than Quez at being able to work against zone and understanding where the voids are, when to get into the voids based on the timing of the play. So Pascal's going to play. So not that Quez won't, but I think Pascal's going to get meaningful snaps.
Well, there's 2 things that he has. He's physical, and in the red zone, this is where he did his damage. So you stick, if you're looking for guys who could get open in the red zone, Goddard, AJ Brown, Pascal. There's a little bit of versatility to this, Jeff. Now, when they go where they're going forward here, as opposed to last season where they just didn't have enough talent. Now they I think they could compete against teams where you could spread them out. I mean, here's the next question, Greg. And now you look at this pass target group. I would think they could be more 11 if they want to be.
They sure can. They can be anything they want based on the personnel, because, Jack Stoll is a player that, from what I've heard, has improved dramatically from last year, this offseason. So they could go 12. They could be a lot more 11. They could be anything they want to be. I mean, and I think they have an interesting backfield combination, because I think you're going to see more snaps for Gainwell, and he's a really good receiver. So, I think that they're in the situation they want to be in, where they could basically line up and play any way they want, depending on the opponent.
All right, Greg, let's talk a little bit about this Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell usage. What's first of all, people are sort of have no idea how to reconcile Miles Sanders last year, where he averaged, I think, 5.5 yards per carry, which is great. He had 0 touchdowns, wasn't used very much in the red zone. What was your takeaway from watching Miles on tape?
I mean, I think we kind of know what Miles is at this point. There are times he'll run hard inside, and I think we've seen that at times. I don't know if that's his ultimate MO though, if that's truly who he is. I think he probably sees himself more as a big playback.
Mhm.
You know, I, I would say he's mildly explosive. Like, I don't think he's a true explosive burner type. I think he's on the spectrum of explosive, he's in the positive range, but I don't think he's one of those special guys.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think when all's said and done that he's a true foundation back. Like, I don't think you can give the ball to Miles Sanders 270 times in a season. I don't think his body will hold up. I don't think he's that kind of runner. I don't think at his core, he's a hard yards runner. At his core, he's shown flashes of that, but I don't think that's who he is. So I don't know how the Eagles see him. Um, I really like Kenneth Gainwell. Um, I could easily see Gainwell in my mind. You know, again, I don't know how this coaching staff sees him. I could easily see Gainwell being a guy that gets 120 carries and is a real factor as a receiver, because that's what he's really, really good at. So I don't know what the division of labor will be. But again, then you have to factor also in Jalen Hurts in the run game. Jalen Hurts will have meaningful design runs. You know, that's I don't know how many there'll be, but he could have 5, 6, 7 design runs in every single game. He with his scrambles, Jalen Hurts could have 130 carries.
Mhm.
The best line, Greg, that I got from someone in Miles Sanders is someone in scouting from another team said to me, he goes, when he watches Sanders, he leaves you wanting more. You see a guy who's very talented. For some reason, you see the 5.5 yards per carry, but yet hands aren't very good. We've seen that consistently the last couple of years. In fact, his targets, he played the same amount of games as he did the last 2 seasons. Targets were down, receptions are down. Gainwell had 60 more targets, 10 more receptions, which brings us to Kenny Gainwell. I understand he didn't play in 2020. That's probably why he dropped. But Greg, when you watch his tape,
Yeah.
give us what this upside could be for this guy.
Well, first of all, I watched his tape in colleges last year in Memphis. Loved him. I mean, to me, Gainwell fits today's NFL. I'm not going to sit here and say as we speak today he's Alvin Kamara, but I think he's that kind of player in the context of an offense, a player that can carry the ball 130 times and be a major factor in the pass game, both offset in the backfield and detached from the formation. When he was in college, he ran wide receiver routes and ran them well. And he's also not small. He's not a little guy. I mean, he's not 225, but he's not 190. He's not built like a scat back. So, you know, he can run inside. So to me, assuming normal growth and assuming work ethic and all those other good things, and I've heard he's a really good kid, I would expect Kenneth Gainwell to be a factor in the context of this offense. Because think of a couple of things. Sirianni is an offensive mind. Not that he doesn't believe in the run game, but he's an offensive guy. Where did Shane Steichen come from? Chargers. Austin Eckler.
Yep.
You know, you could almost argue that they're very similar in how they can be deployed in the context of an offense. You know, he has experience with a back like that. Okay. And you know, so I would expect Gainwell to be a much bigger part of the Eagles offense this year.
That's funny. Adam and I had that discussion recently. And we said, you know, for Miles Sanders, being in the 4th year of a 4-year deal and not really reaching his fullest potential has now put him in a different situation. We remember his first year made some mistakes, but Doug would throw his arm around him, coach him up, gave him the opportunities because he was that guy. But now different coaching staff, different handpicked running back. And we were remarking that if Miles gets hurt, which he has tended to do, or if he just fumbles the ball a couple of times in a game in the 4th quarter, we wouldn't be surprised to see Kenneth Gainwell then get a lot more opportunities. And then it's Kenneth's job to lose at that point.
Could be. And they still have Boston Scott, who, say what you want, he's been a very valuable piece for this team in a certain role. Right. So, you know, I mean, I think it's a good backfield situation. They probably just don't have the true feature back. And, you know, ultimately to me, what the mix becomes is going to be most fascinating. Last year, they were clearly a running team. and that's how they won, and that's how they had to play.
Right.
I think with Jalen's development, and when they go back and look at the tape just like I did, they'll see some really positive things and feel there's a lot to build on. And clearly with the signing of Brown and the continued development of Devonta Smith, who's really good. And you know, we don't need to talk a lot about the O-line because it's just really, really good. And one thing I found out in watching all of Jalen Hurts as much as I did is Lane Johnson is absolutely terrific.
Yeah, he's a beast.
They have a great O-line. There's not a whole lot more you can say. They got a great O-line.
The only thing, not specifically this year, because Kelsey's on the team, but he is on a 1-year contract. So if he retires, Greg, to me, Cam Jurgens is kind of new to the center position. It's not like he's played it 10 years. The stuff that Kelsey is explained to me, the Kelsey's ability to get the team out of a bad look is something that I don't think you could be so great at it when you're young, when you're new to the position.
Jurgens won't be great at that because he's a converted tight end.
Right.
In fact, Jurgens had to gain 40 pounds.
Right.
You know, Jurgens plays center like a tight end right now. He needs a redshirt season.
Exactly.
That was obviously the plan. You know, Kelsey fortunately has been an Iron Man and he doesn't miss games. And he's super smart. And I mean, Kelsey's as good as there is in the league in every way. You know, so the Jurgens, in an ideal world, Cam Jurgens, you know, doesn't play unless they're winning games, 40-10, or hopefully they're not losing games 40-10.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. Yeah,
right. But I mean, you know, this is a redshirt year for Cam Jurgens.
Yeah.
They love the athleticism because he's a tight end. They love the movement. In that way, they saw him as similar to Kelsey, but he's not Kelsey. I mean, and whether he becomes that, no one can answer that. But if he had to play this year, you know, if God forbid Kelsey truly got hurt, first of all, I'm not sure they would do that. Because this team can compete, and they have two guys who've played center before in Dickerson and Sayamalu, and I personally think, I could be dead wrong. You know, I'm not in the building, and we haven't gone through training camp. I could be dead wrong, but I think they'd move one of those guys to center and play Sua Pet at guard. But that's just my opinion.
I agree, because here's the thing. Jurgens, there's certain things about the center position, as I talk to people in scouting, that Jurgens simply just will not be able to do immediately because he's inexperienced at that. It's not like, again, he hasn't played the position as long as these other guys have. There's certain things that Kelsey could do. We know the centers are supposed to get you in and out of plays anyway, but he's so brilliant. He's so elite with his mind.
Yep.
It's just, I just want to bring something up different, which we don't talk about a lot, is how smart Kelsey is. We know how athletic he is and how great of a football player he is.
Right.
But to get you in and out of plays, guys, is not easy to do. And it's just something in scouting that I know when people scout schools, they look for stuff like that.
Yes.
No, Jurgens will not be that guy. I mean, maybe he's that guy in 4 years, but like I said, I think that if Kelsey were to have to miss meaningful time, I don't think Jurgens would be the guy this year. I really don't.
Yeah.
Right. And I think actually they would probably go to Driscoll, right? At guard, it would be Driscoll and Dickerson, or Driscoll and Sayamalu if they had, if
don't forget Landon
guy had to go to
Dickerson.
center. Yeah.
Landon Dickerson played center at Alabama his last year at Alabama.
Yeah.
He got hurt late in the season. So Dickerson has center experience in the best college football conference in the country against big time competition. He would move to center. And you're right. Then Driscoll would end up playing guard. Or Sua Peta. I mean, it'd be one of those two guys.
Right. And also make sure you're checking out PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience of their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So check them out at PHL Sports Nation and on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation. All right, defensively, Greg, we know the players. I mean, there's really not too many, other than Hassan Reddick, who was the big free agent signing that we'll get into. What Adam and I speak most about is, what is the defensive front scheme going to look like on any given down and distance now that they have Jordan Davis, their first round pick, and now that they have Hassan Reddick playing that spot last year that they sort of used sporadically with Jannard Avery, and then he would come off the field. But now they've got a 3-down player in Hassan Reddick.
Well, you'd have to assume that their base front's going to be the same. Because that's why they signed Reddick. Reddick's going to, I assume, play that role.
Right.
So, I would assume that that 5-man front in base is going to stay. So you're going to have, I assume Josh Sweat again would be the guy that would move inside and, sort of play over the tackle at the 5 technique or the 4, the 4-eye, but, or the 4 technique, whatever. But I can't imagine that part's going to be different, because that's why they signed Hassan Reddick, I would assume.
Is it, have you, because we've discussed it, do you think maybe it's sort of I don't want to call it a 3-4, but like you would have a first down, Jordan Davis in the middle, nose, flanked by Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox. And then those two, and then you have Reddick as an overhang with Sweat as maybe
I guess theoretically what you could see, because we really don't know about Brandon Graham coming off a major, he had an Achilles, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't really know about Brandon Graham. You could easily see in their base front that Sweat would end up being the wide 9 on the outside.
Right.
And they could play Davis and Hargrave inside, and Cox would be that sort of 5 technique, which is kind of what he sort of is anyway, because he's a D tackle. You could see that for sure. And then Reddick outside of Cox. I am a big believer in Josh Sweat, and I would much rather see him all the time be lined up outside of a tackle rather than inside of an offensive tackle. Right. But that's me. I mean, I personally think if Josh Sweat lined up as a wide 9 on every snap, he's going to get 15 sacks. I think Josh Sweat is a really, really good edge pass rusher with a desirable combination of strength, power, hand usage, quickness. I mean, I think Josh Sweat can be a really good edge pass rusher.
Greg, Milton Williams is a guy that was certainly a big surprise last year as a 3rd-round pick. What do you think he could be? Let's say Fletcher Cox retires after the season or he doesn't come back for 23.
Right.
What kind of player could Milton Williams be? Could it be? Do you see him as a starter? Do you like him better as a 3rd tackle? What do you see him, or an end?
Well, I really liked him coming out of college. He was not necessarily a surprise. I mean, he's a surprise in how well he played, but I'm not surprised that he had a good year. And I think he can play multiple spots. And I think he's, one of those guys. I mean, I don't know how they see him, because obviously he's in his 2nd year, so he'll be on his rookie contract for quite a while. Cox won't be here forever. The big question is what Jordan Davis can become, and that will impact Milton Williams, because Jordan Davis, you don't trade up in the 1st round to draft Jordan Davis to play 20 snaps a game. He might do that this year, but that's not what you see for him in his 2nd, 3rd, 4th year. So, and Davis is a tackle. So ultimately the hope is that Davis will be a 50 snap guy, down the road. I mean, that's the hope. I personally think that's a question mark, but that's the hope. So given that, who knows, maybe the 2 tackles become Davis and Williams, because Hargrave, when his contract ends, he's going to be, 30 or over 30, right, Adam?
His contract's up
this year, right?
Is up. Yeah, his contract's up after the season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could, depending on Davis's development and Williams' development, you could see, Davis and Williams being the interior, the 2 interior tackles going forward after this year. I'm not saying that will happen, but it could happen.
Yeah, we talk about Milton Williams a lot and just trying to figure out what is his role. A guy who flashed last year and showed you some good stuff. What's his role going for this year?
That's a great question.
Did you see, how did you see, because he's short-armed, and we talked about how he gives you a good burst as either a 4-3 interior tackle or maybe even a big power edge against the run, but or even on passing downs. How did he play the run for a guy who has short arms?
I thought he played it pretty well. I mean, he had games down the stretch where I thought he was dominant. When I say dominant, not in terms of tackles, because defensive tackles, that's one thing I learned years and years ago when I started watching college defensive tackles. You could look at a stat sheet and see they had 1 tackle and think I had a bad game. Then you put the tape on, he dominated the game.
Exactly.
Williams had dominant snaps playing predominantly inside, that's probably where he's best. I mean, I could see Milton Williams ultimately being a 3 technique down the road. I mean, I think he's got that kind of ability. Being a gap player where he's not hand fighting guys, where if his arms are not as long as you'd ideally like them, it's not quite as big a factor because, you're not two gapping, you're not hand fighting.
Right.
I think Williams can be a 3 technique. Look, like I said, I would think in an ideal world, down the road, the Eagles would see Williams as a 3 and Davis as a 1. That's what I think they would see.
I think that makes sense.
Now, that won't be the case this year because Hargrave and Cox are still here, but there will be snaps. Jordan Davis is not going to play 40 snaps a game this year. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, I agree with you.
People can get all excited about him, and he's a straight line athlete and all that good stuff, but he's not going to play 40 snaps a game this year.
Right.
Yeah, the way we understand it, Greg, there are probably going to be multiple, whatever that looks like, it looks like. But the good thing is they've got a lot more talent with Davis in there. Graham, we heard the early word is he's looked good, but it's Achilles. We'll see what that looks like. We talked about Williams. Marlon Tuipulotu is a guy that I know, Greg, you liked last year before the draft.
You know what's fascinating, and he might not even make the team.
I know.
You know who is not about him, but you know who is the most highly recruited defensive lineman coming out of Texas in 5 years ago or whatever?
Marvin Wilson.
Yeah. Marvin Wilson was the #1 recruited defensive lineman in the country coming out of Texas. And when Florida State got him, it was seen as an absolute coup. And he was undrafted coming out of Florida State.
Crazy. Well, he is part of that mix along with
Noah
works. Ellis. Did you watch any Noah Ellis snaps?
I did not watch Noah Ellis, but somebody told me that he was, because he's one of those big, powerful, strong guys, right?
Yeah. His legs are bigger than Captain.
Somebody told me that they really loved his tape. I just did not get to see him.
His calves. I mean, they're like tree trunks. He's wide. He's a run guy. But just before we get to linebackers, Greg, this seems to me like the depth on this D line is the best it's been in several years.
Really good.
Yeah,
so really good. And I'm going to just reiterate again that I'm a Josh Sweat guy, and
we all are.
And that's from tape. I mean, I've never met Josh Sweat, so I don't know him.
What a great story!
I think Josh Sweat is a really good football player.
Excellent, good stuff. All right, as Adam said, let's talk about this linebacker group, which is probably the most revamped group of the defense. They bring in Kaiser White from the Chargers. We talked about him last year for the Eagles-Chargers game. You liked his tape going into the game. Nakobe Dean they draft from Georgia. We talked about him in the intel with Greg Cosell. Davion Taylor will come back from an injury. We'll see where he factors in. And of course, TJ Edwards comes back after sort of stabilizing the defense last year when things were going haywire for the first 6 weeks. So how do you see this thing?
I think, Jeff, the way I see it, I think this is a training camp battle. Because because they're going to play with 2 stacked backers.
Right.
Predominantly, even in nickel, they're going to play predominantly with 2 stacked backers. So who are they going to be? Look, I think they signed White because they feel he's going to be one of them. Now you have Davion Taylor, who's, arguably the best athlete on the defense. So, what is he going to be? Can he be a good football player as opposed to just being a really good athlete? I'm sure they saw Nakobe Dean as a steal in the 3rd round because a lot of people saw him as a late 1st rounder, and a lot of people didn't draft him for 2 reasons: injury history and the fact that he's under 6 feet. And there's a lot of teams that have specific height, weight parameters for positions, as Adam knows. And if your linebacker's 5'11" and a quarter, they don't see him as a viable option at linebacker in today's NFL. Some teams are like that. So, and Dean was a really good blitzer at Georgia. So again, we don't know what Jonathan Gannon's going to do this year. I think it's going to look a lot different in terms of in-game schematics than it did a year ago, but we'll see how that plays out. So I don't know how they see Dean. Is Dean going to play in nickel because he can blitz? Are they going to blitz more? I tell you a guy whose tape I absolutely loved. I loved Kyron Johnson's tape out of Kansas. And I'm so curious to see how he goes through training camp, because you know when you put on tape of a guy, and I didn't know anything about him, okay, I mean, saw his name on a list, put the tape on, and then you see a guy who just looks like he's playing faster and more intensely than everybody else on the field.
Wow.
That was Kyron Johnson. I mean, he just looked like that guy. And I'm really curious to see if there's a role for this guy. I mean, it may end up being backing up Hassan Reddick. Who knows? I don't know.
Probably specials. Yeah, if he makes it.
I'm not saying he's the starter. That's not my point. But I would not surprise me at all if he makes the team. And then once the season starts, you never know with injury and whatever when guys have to play. So I just don't know right now. I would assume Kazir White is one backer. I'm not sure who the other backer is going to be as we speak, in July before training camp. I'm not sure who the other linebacker is going to be in their nickel.
I think the fans
in an ideal
would
world,
love to see it be Nakobe.
I can tell you in an ideal world, it's not TJ Edwards.
Right.
They would like it to be, I'm sure, Davion Taylor or Nakobe Dean in an ideal world. Now, I'm not saying that'll happen, but I think that's what they would like.
Yep, and I agree. That'll be a big battle in camp to see who outlasts there and who those two nickel stack linebackers wind up becoming. All right, all we got to do is go through this secondary here. Let's pause real quick and thank our friends at Let's Get Checked for sponsoring this video. Struggling at the gym? Are your T levels dropping? Then get checked with Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked offers a wide variety of testing options such as vitamin tests, liver tests, cholesterol, and CRP tests. They also have tests for iron, kidney, diabetes, heart, Lyme disease, sexual health, and of course colon cancer screening, and more. Just head to their website, trylgc.com/insidethebirds, to check out their full range of testing. The link is in the description. Let's Get Checked manufactures all sample collection kits at their accredited facility using the world's best accredited labs and a team of physicians that reviews your orders and results, along with nurses available 24/7 to help with treatment options. Let's Get Checked is your one-stop shop for all your testing needs. Hit the link in this video description to find out more. All right, again, big thanks to our friends at Let's Get Checked for sponsoring the video. Of course, it's important to get yourself tested for your medical health. All right. Well, the big signing was James Bradbury, which was kind of their upgrade over at cornerback over Steven Nelson. And it's said that he'll be a better fit than Steven Nelson was. What say you, Greg Cosell, on that?
Well, I think the way I'd answer that is I think Bradbury at this point in his career is a much better zone corner than man corner. He actually grew up as a zone corner in Carolina when Ron Rivera and I think he might even have been there when Sean McDermott was still there, and they played a lot of zone back then when Sean was the DC. And to me, Bradbury is a really good zone corner, not as good in man. That doesn't mean the Eagles aren't going to play man. I mean, he's an upgrade. So, when you have a chance to get an upgrade, you get an upgrade. I mean, and Bradbury has length, and that's always coveted at corner in today's NFL. They made another signing, which I think, I've done San Francisco radio for years, and I always thought Jaquiski Tartt was a really good football player, and I think he's going to start at safety with Marcus Epps. I think Jaquiski Tartt is a good player, and I really like Marcus Epps. I was talking about Josh Sweat. I am so anxious to see Epps, who I believe will get the chance to be a starter this year.
He will. Yeah.
And I think he's savvy, aware. He can play on the back end. Not ideally. I mean, he's not a true post safety, single high safety, but, snaps here and there, he can do that. I think he plays downhill really well. I think he plays in the box well. I hate to use the word instincts because it's a word that everybody throws out, but I think Epps sees the game well. And I like I said, I think Tartt's going to end up being the starting safety with Epps.
What do you on Jaquiski Tartt? What do you like about him? I'm curious what your tape study shows you.
Tartt's big. He's physical. He can run a bit. In San Francisco, he played both in the box and on the back end. People probably remember him. I think he's the one who dropped the Stafford pass that would have ended, that actually would have put the Niners in the Super Bowl. but so people remember that play. But he's been a really solid football player for the Niners, really solid. Small school kid, as I recall, Adam, didn't he come out of
Play with Bradbury at Samford. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. At Samford, correct. And I remember watching his tape coming out, and he flashed. I mean, you want to see a guy flash. It's like when I watched Kevin Byard at was in Middle Tennessee, and he flashed. Tart flashed in college.
Just been hurt a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah. Recently.
Well, his career back to 17, he's missed a lot of time.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Yeah,
and I don't know enough about his body to know that.
Yeah,
but I think he's a really good. I think he's a better player than Anthony Harris. That's
so you're calling it. Qatar's going to start over Harris.
Okay. I like that.
I like it. Okay.
Well, I don't see. To me, that's not a controversial take. I think his tape tells you that he's a better player.
Okay.
I mean,
I know he's going to play behind him, but
Adam, it's not a hot take.
You don't do hot takes.
I don't do hot takes. I think his tape tells you that he's a better player.
Okay.
We'll call it warm fact. He's just a better player.
He's a better player.
As we know in this league, the better player doesn't always play.
He could get hurt, and again, that's an issue. And obviously, if you talk to our good buddy Mike Giddings, he'll tell you all about guys that get hurt, and all that with his grades. And maybe he'll get hurt. But if he is healthy and makes it through training camp, perfectly healthy, I think he and Epps will be the starting safeties.
Let me ask you a question also at safety. Kavon Wallace, we get a lot of questions about him. He's barely played in 2 years.
Yeah.
Had some injuries, but what were your thoughts about him coming out of Clemson into the pros, and what do you think he could be at this level?
If I'm being honest, based on his tape, I thought he was a backup kind of player. I thought he was a strong safety. He was a line of scrimmage player who was super competitive, super intense, super feisty, just wasn't big enough. And to me, he's not a back-end player.
All right. Anybody among the backup corners, Greg, that sort of at any point ever jumped out at you from a tape standpoint, whether college or pro, being from Zach McPherson to Jimmy Moreland to Tay Gowan? Any of those, one of those guys jump out at you? Maybe?
I thought Jimmy Moreland had some good moments in Washington as a slot. I mean, obviously Maddox is the slot he signed. He's not going to beat out Maddox, but I thought Moreland showed he could play in the league. And again, free agents are, they always start behind the 8 ball. But I thought both Josh Jobe and Mario Goodrich were draftable players. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying they're going to make the roster, but I thought they were draftable players.
All right, we'll sum this all up real quick. First, we'll pause for a word from our friends, our great sponsors, including Sky Motor Cars. And if you go out there to Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You'll get a great deal. All right, Greg, I'm pretty good at the process of elimination. So I've asked you in each of the three parts of this series, when we did Washington, Dallas, and Giants, if you thought each team had the best 53 in the division, and you said no to the first 3 teams. So my gut instinct tells me you think the Eagles have the best 53 in the NFC East.
Well, I'm only going to answer that if I get A.J. Brown's guarantee of $57 million.
You'll have to talk to his agent.
I do think the Eagles have the best roster in the NFC East, which of course means nothing right now, other than I think they have the best roster.
Of course.
I think that they've done a really good job. We know it comes down to Jalen, and I think there's reason for optimism, but I'm not going to sit here and say Jalen Hurts is going to be a top 10 quarterback, but I think there's reason for optimism with Jalen. I think the Eagles have a defined and clear understanding of what it takes to win, and they attacked it that way. Say what you want, but 2 really good starting points in any level of football is they've got a really good O-line and a really good D-line with a lot of depth. And that makes you competitive for the most part. And I think that, they obviously address the skill position players on offense. God, we didn't even talk about Dallas Goedert, and I sure hope he can be healthy, because I think Dallas Goedert healthy is a top 5 tight end in the league. And I think defensively, they've got a lot of depth. I think the main issue is linebacker, as we discussed. But, I think this is a team that has a lot of good players, and clearly they played well down the stretch last year. They didn't beat great teams, but that's who was on their schedule. But it gets you in the mode of, hey, we can line up every week and we can win games. That's the bottom line. believing that, believing in your staff, number one, as players, and the staff made adjustments clearly that we saw. We discussed this on our Sunday pregame show, the adjustments that were made throughout the season. Because week 6, the fans were ready to, jump off the bridges, and then adjustments were made and right. I mean, isn't, and they won games.
Yeah.
Now we'll see how it goes. It's July as we're talking about this right now. But I think they've got a good roster, and they've got a lot of depth in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, you throw Goddard in there with Brown, Smith, Watkins, who could run with this offensive line. One guy we didn't mention, Greg. Did you see Britton Covey at all in college?
I did not, other than on TV in that unbelievable bowl game with Utah and was it Ohio State? Yes, it was Utah and Ohio State, the game that went back and forth. So that's the only time I saw him. He had a great game.
You're going to see him. I know he's an undrafted free agent. They gave him some good coin. He had made. I know it's only 7-on-7, so you don't want to read too much into it. But literally, the word we heard is no one could cover him, and they're really looking forward to seeing what happens when they actually could get physical with him, because when you talk about true slots, you obviously have Greg Ward, but this Covey kid apparently, as one Eagles source said, he looked like Wes Welker out there. So he looked
anxious in the game I saw on TV. He looked like he had great short area quick.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Jeff and I were.
I don't know who's going to make the team, who's not going to make the team, but I actually thought that Grant Calcaterra had good tape in college, and people might remember he took a year off, but he was in Oklahoma 3 years ago, and he was being talked about as the next great tight end in college football. And then I guess he had a bad concussion or he had an injury, and he took the year off and came back this year. He's got some talent.
Yep.
Well, training camp begins this week, gentlemen, so it's going to be fascinating to watch it all play out. That has been the completion now of our 4-part series with Greg Cosell previewing the NFC East. If you missed any of the first 3, they're all available to go listen to. You can see them on YouTube. Greg, we thanks so much for having you back again. It's been awesome. And I know you're probably getting excited too, as we are, for the pregame show, which, we're not too far away from that. So
no, I love doing that with you guys. We have a lot of fun doing that. That is really fun.
We do. So thanks again to you. Thanks to our producer, Tyler Strasser, who's done a great job. As always, you've been listening to Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. And of course, we thank you, the listeners, for flying with us inside the birds.